What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. If you've read the title, today we will be talking about the complete progression guide for berserkers in Hypixel Skyblock. Of course, if you guys end up enjoying the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and also join my Discord server. There are currently a few giveaways going on in the server as well, with not many people entered. So if you want to get some Hypixel Skyblock coins and join my community, just join the server. And I kept you guys waiting long enough, so let's get right into the video. This video will follow the same structure as my other progression videos on my channel, but similarly to the Archer progression guide, it will also ignore the island progression, as although there's kind of progression in floors, berserkers are useful in all floors, so there's not really a clear progression except for the linear one. So the three parts that will be covered in this video are going to be armor progression, tools progression, and finally pets progression. And I'll be placing timestamps in the video for each of these parts, so if you only want to check out one, then just go and pretty much just skip to that one. But I do recommend watching the full video, as I do talk about combinations between different armor sets, pets, and weapons. Let's now get into the first part of this video, which is the armor progressions for berserkers. In terms of armor, berserkers have pretty much the same armor as archers, so I'll be going over briefly some of the armor sets you should be going for. Especially in the very early game, your armor sets are still just going to be strong dragon armor, unstable dragon armor, or young dragon armor. And these are usually your best bet. If you're on a budget, get young, but if you have a bit more money, get unstable, and finally if you have a few mil, then get strong. Strong is going to be the best dragon armor apart from superior for berserkers. And then afterwards, once you have gone past the level of strong dragon armor and you have a few kata levels like kata 14, you should be going for armor sets such as the Zombie Knight. Let me just go over a few of them. Zombie Knight armor, which has very good stats for berserker and is the one I recommend. Or other damage setups like Zombie Soldier. Actually, I think that was the Zombie Knight. Yeah, this is Zombie Knight armor. And Zombie Soldier or some other set, but Zombie Knight is usually your best bet, although it may have a higher kata level requirement. Also note that the kata level requirement will change depending on what floor the armor piece got dropped in, so do check to find pieces that you're actually able to use. After you are able to get a few levels and you're able to beat floor 5 and you get your floor 5 completion, you should then move on to, just the same as archers, 3/4 shadow assassin armor, with your chestplate being either a Zombie Knight chestplate or a Zombie Soldier chestplate, or maybe even a perfect chestplate for EHP. With this setup, you should be able to do even up to floor 6 with a good weapon and decent kata level, and is, although very, a lot of people mock 3/4 shadow assassin, calling you a 3/4 shadow assassin non, a juju non, livid dagger non, but honestly, a 3/4 shadow assassin, as I've said in my archer video, is very powerful and is actually really good for its price. Afterwards, once you get some more money, I also recommending right away for berserkers getting a golden head of the floor you play the most. Especially golden heads for anything floor 5 or below are incredibly cheap. I'm pretty sure a clean, even livid head, so floor 5 is 200,000 coins. So you just can get a golden head and it will usually be better than the shadow assassin helmet in their respective floor. After you get a bit more money, you can then go and get the Shadow Assassin chestplate and complete your Shadow Assassin set. This will allow you to get the set bonus, which gives you 1 strength per kill in a dungeon run, which is very good for berserkers. So you should be going for that full Shadow Assassin armor, and it's pretty important, even more so than when you're an archer. After you're able to grind a lot more and you're able to get your floor 7 completion, you can get it through a carry or just grinding and trying to find a good party that is willing to play with you. After you get your floor 7 completion, you should then move on to Necron armor. But if you don't have your floor 7 completion, I will interject here, you can actually go for frozen blaze armor with a blaze pet. As I've stated in my other video for archers, again, a lot of this information is overlapping, and the frozen blaze set has become really strong now with 2 gemstone slots, and actually outperforms Necron in some conditions with a blaze pet, and it is very powerful with no requirements. So there are currently no requirements for frozen blaze armor. So if you want really good damage and attack power and EHP, then you should probably get that if you don't have your floor 7 completion. Additionally, frozen blaze is usually cheaper than Necron as well for clean, so it's also a more budget option. So now let's move on to Necron, the endgame armor set for berserkers. However, it's not by itself an endgame armor set, but paired with different helmets, it can become very, very powerful. So as you can see right now, I'm using 3/4 Necron and a diamond head, but I'm first going to go over different options for helmets in progression. First, your first set is full Necron. Full Necron does give you the advantage of the Witherborn, but even in dungeons it's not really relevant, it's not that much damage, and it's kind of annoying to have. And you can easily swap that out for a Tarantula helmet, and it's also equally good for damage, except maybe a bit worse in dungeons towards the end of the dungeon. However, outside of dungeons, a Tarantula helmet could actually outperform a Necron helmet. After that, you should just go and get a golden head. As I've said before, golden heads are really good. If, for example, you're doing all of your runs in floor 5, for example, you're specializing in floor 5, then you should be using a golden livid head. Even a pretty maxed out one is good. And then, if you're specializing in floor 6, get a golden Zidane head, floor 7, golden Necron head. And pretty much these helmets will just make you a lot stronger in their respective floors, and is really good for berserkers. Additionally, the Warden helmet is also an excellent damage set outside of dungeons, but within dungeons it gets outperformed by even the golden heads in some situations, so I highly don't recommend it, disrecommend it, because especially since the Warden helmet is 300 million coins right now, so it's just not worth it, as it cripples your speed and only barely gives you better damage, and some situations actually gives you worse damage and also gives you worse EHP. Once you get a few hundred mil to spare, then you should go for diamond helmets. Diamond heads are just really powerful overall, and as you can see, the one I'm wearing right now is the diamond Necron head, and it's just really powerful in floor 7 and M7 when it's going to come out. Similarly, if you get a diamond Zidane head or a diamond livid head, it will just make you so much stronger in their respective floors. And if you want to start getting into master mode, you can even go for a diamond Bonzo head or a diamond Scarf head, and I think some of those diamond heads are actually relatively cheap. Let's see, should I write diamond head? Do I get anything? No. Let me write diamond, I guess diamond Bonzo head. Let's try that. And if you want to get into master mode but are not confident about being able to do it, you can go for a diamond Bonzo head, and it'll make you much stronger. That's pretty much the progression order you should follow for berserker armor. And pretty much, if you want to become an endgame berserker, you're going to be looking at a diamond head and 3/4 Necron. That's usually your best option, and then you have to see what pets and weapons you pair it with. So now let's move on to the second section of this video, which is going to be what weapons to use as a berserker. And this has a lot more options, and we'll be going into a lot more detail about choices and paths you should take depending on your skills and your stats. Upon just starting dungeons, your first weapons can honestly just be an aspect of the dragons if it's starred, and it'll honestly be a pretty decent starter weapon for dungeons. So you could probably just go strong dragon armor or something with an aspect of the dragons, and you'd be pretty set for maybe floor entrance in floor 1, maybe even floor 2 if you have a decent kata level. However, you should quickly go and progress to dungeon swords. For example, I believe one of the best dungeon swords for early game is the zombie soldier cutlass, as it gives you 100% attack speed, and is basically a budget livid dagger. I'll talk more about the livid dagger afterwards in this weapon progression guide, but pretty much you should go, and if you have the Cal level, it's kind of similar to zombie knight armor. If you have the Cal level, then you should be using it. So a zombie soldier cutlass is very, very good, and you can also go and get a fell sword, which is also very, very good. Afterwards, we're going into the actual like big weapons, like right off the bat. However, recently, like a lot of changes have made some of these like higher tier weapons pretty cheap, especially this first weapon we're going to talk about, which is the Flower of Truth. The Flower of Truth is literally like the best early game weapon, and it used to be like always like Flower of Truth versus Livid Dagger. I was team Flower of Truth back then, but they're both excellent weapons. However, the Flower of Truth clean is now like half or even a third of the price of a Livid Dagger due to a lot of nerfs, and also like had a lot of like ancient roses are being added to the economy by just people grinding floor 6 doing rose runs. So Flower of Truths have become really cheap, so you can just check out the age and you can probably get a decent start and enchanted one for like 3-4 million coins, and it's just really good as a weapon. It has a ranged ability that counts as a melee attack. It has all that wonderful stuff. It has great stats, great strength. It's honestly very, very good. But let's now talk about the competitor to the Flower of Truth, which is the Livid Dagger. The Livid Dagger will probably be better than the Flower of Truth nowadays after the Flower of Truth nerfs. It has that 100% attack speed, allowing you to hit as fast as possible, although you actually only need 82 for melee attacks, I believe, to be at maximum speed. The Livid Dagger has more damage than the Flower of Truth, attacks faster, but has a more mediocre ability. However, it's usually going to be your better bet as an early game berserker if you have like the EHP to run into the battle and attack the mobs. So as you can see here, I'm going to show you the prices of the Flower of Truth and Livid Dagger real quick. So as you can see, a clean Flower of Truth lowest bin is like 2.8 million. As you can see, this one actually has stars and hot potato bucks and some enchantments, so you probably get that one as a pretty good deal. And then a Livid Dagger is going to cost you somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 million coins clean. So the Livid Dagger is more expensive, but it's really up to you. I do recommend when starting to just go and get yourself a Flower of Truth and maybe invest your money in like talismans or better armor or better pets instead of going for the Livid Dagger. Another option as well is if you're later in the game and just starting dungeons later in your progression, if you have Fishing 26, you can then go and get yourself a Soul Whip. So this one's a pretty bad Soul Whip, but if your Soul Whip is starred, it has some pretty decent enchants on it. It can deal some pretty good ranged attacks. As you can see, you can go here and pretty much just hold it and fire these beams at your enemies, and they do count as melee hits, so it is actually pretty good, and some people even claim that it's better than the Livid Dagger and the Flower of Truth. However, it does have that condition of Fishing 26, which is quite difficult to reach, especially if you don't like fishing like me. It took me a long time to get Fishing 26. Now that we've seen these basic mid-game weapons that should be able to carry you all the way to like floor 6, for example, you can also get a few other options that are more expensive and marginally better, but I do not personally recommend. The first of these is going to be the Shadow Fury. The Shadow Fury is arguably better than the Livid Dagger. However, lowest bin for a Shadow Fury is 25 million coins, so it's very, very expensive, and it's just not really worth its money to be using instead of a Livid Dagger or a Flower of Truth. And I personally do not recommend going for a Shadow Fury. Other weapons I don't recommend using are things such as the Emerald Blade or any of these like powerful outside dungeon weapons that cannot be starred. As if they cannot be starred, they won't be very good in dungeons and just aren't a very good option overall. For example, even my warped aspect of the end, which is technically dungeonized in some way, I believe. From what I understand, warped dungeonizes the aspect of the end and makes it stronger in dungeons. it is still kind of mediocre in dungeons and gets outperformed by even my Flower of Truth, although this thing costs like triple of the price of my Flower of Truth. So yeah, outside of dungeons, this thing will easily outperform the Flower of Truth in damage, but within dungeons, it just doesn't pull its own weight. Now that we've seen all the mid-game, or even like sometimes late-game weapons for Berserkers in dungeons in Hypixel Skyblock, there's this like kind of annoying thing that then happens for Berserkers, is that there's this big skill and price jump that happens after the Flower of Truth and the Livid Dagger. This is due to the fact that your next progression weapon is going to be the Axe of the Shredded. Up until now, there's been like a very slow and gradual progression for weapons for Berserkers, which makes it one of the pretty much the most popular early game class. But now that you are in the late game, your next jump is going to be the Axe of the Shredded. The reason why the Axe of the Shredded, in my eyes, is like such a huge jump is because, first of all, the first obvious thing is the price. An Axe of the Shredded will cost you 81 million coins, being 10 times more expensive, more than 10 times, like 11 times more expensive than a Livid Dagger, and like 20 something times more expensive than the Flower of Truth. So it's going to be very expensive, and is going to be just overall a difficult item to get when you're in the like early late game, mid game area. Additionally, the Axe of the Shredded has the requirement of Zombie Slayer 8, which is something that a lot of people do not have. So if you don't have Zombie Slayer 8, you can either grind for it and try to grind the money to get an Axe of the Shredded, but it's just a very hard jump in the progression. However, if you are loyal to Berserkers, then I guess you can go and get yourself a nice Axe of the Shredded, and that will be your next step in the progression. Now that we've seen the next step in the weapons progression, let's go on to the before last, I suppose, step in weapons progression for Berserkers, which is the Giant's Sword. The Giant's Sword doesn't have an insane requirement like the Axe of the Shredded, but the Giant's Sword is 157 million coins lowest bin. So a Giant Sword is very expensive a weapon, but it is an excellent Berserker weapon, with its only downsides being the fact that it has very bad lifesteal and healing compared to other weapons due to it having the One for All enchant, but its massive single hit damage does quite make up for that. The Axe of the Shredded is kind of like the opposite of the Giant Sword, being way less damage but having ranged capabilities and also having amazing lifesteal and regeneration abilities. Now that we've seen these two late game Berserker weapons, let's move on to the final Berserker weapon and the end game Berserker weapon, which is surprisingly unpopular for most players. This weapon is of course the Valkyrie. The Valkyrie is a Necron's Blade variant, so let me just go on it. And lowest bin right now for a Valkyrie is going to set you back 710 million coins. So this is like some serious money now. The Valkyrie does boast the highest ferocity of any weapon, I'm pretty sure. So that is very impressive and very useful as a Berserker. And if you really want to go all out and become the ultimate Berserker Chad, then I suppose you can then go and acquire yourself a Valkyrie. And that is going to pretty much be your endgame weapon for Berserkers in Hypixel Skyblock dungeons. Now that we've seen this strange progression for Berserker weapons in Hypixel Skyblock, let's move on to the final part of this completion of progression guide, which is going to talk about Berserker pets. Berserkers have a few pets, quite a few actually, that really dominate the Berserker meta, and I'm pretty much going to be addressing these right now. So your first Berserker pet is usually going to be just like a simple damage pet. Like you don't have to be very picky, like any damage pet will really do as your early one. It could be a Wither Skeleton if you can afford one, but you could even use something like a Wolf or anything that gives you some kind of combat stats, or a Griffin for example to get the regeneration. and pretty much just get a decent combat pet. But of course in the early game it doesn't really matter until you can get to the mid/late game, where you get the first and most popular pet for berserkers. This pet is the baby yeti, with preferably the shelmet applied to it. The shelmet pet item will make you not take knockback, and is very, very important for the baby yeti, because not because of baby yeti, for the berserker, because you're always going to be rushing into battle and attacking people, and if these mobs can knock you back, it's just a very, very annoying thing to happen. The shelmet will prevent this from happening, and pretty much having a shelmet is almost crucial in the late to mid game berserker, for mid to late game berserkers. So pretty much get a baby yeti of shelmet, and the reason why the baby yeti is so important is because of his abilities. So let me go, its second ability actually. So let me go on a level 100 baby yeti to show you guys what I mean. Baby yeti. The level 100 baby yeti, see this one has a dwarf turtle shelmet. Second ability is ice shield, and you gain 100% of your strength as defense. That is absolutely huge. As you can see right now with my stats, I currently have 907 defense, but I have 1000 strength, and if I'm holding my aspect of the void, I still have 1000 strength apparently. But that 1000 strength will be converted to defense, pretty much effectively doubling my EHP, because my defense is being doubled. I think that's how it works. So it will double my EHP, which is absolutely huge. So like that, you'll be able to rush into battle way more efficiently as a berserker, and it will just help you stay alive way more. Please also note that all you need is an epic baby yeti, as a legendary ability only buffs the yeti sword, which is completely useless for berserkers. So if you want to get a legendary one, go for it, but it's probably going to cost you more for a high level one than an epic one, and they both will do the exact same thing. Just make sure they have shelmet applied to them and they have a decent level. Now that we've seen the baby yeti, I also want to touch on some other pets, such as the blue whale. For berserkers, the blue whale gets pretty easily obliterated by the baby yeti, because berserker is such a strength based class even after the strength nerf. And the blue whale will just be like a worse option than the baby yeti for almost the same price. So if you're going berserker, I just don't recommend using the blue whale, and just go for the baby yeti. I also mentioned earlier that you can use a wither skeleton, and this is kind of where the wither skeleton comes back into play, because the wither skeleton is just really good also for EHP in floor 7. In the floor 7 boss fight, with the wither skeleton's wither blood ability, makes you deal 50% more damage to wither mobs. 50%. So you'll be dealing much more damage to Necron and his wither miners and wither things. So pretty much if you have that, you can use that and increase your damage massively thanks to the wither skeleton. And it also helps that it has a death's touch ability, of course, that gives you 200% damage over 3 seconds with the wither effect. That pretty much shows all of the mid to late game and late game pretty much pets. Until master, even in master mode, you should probably be using a baby yeti. But there are once again the 2 end game pets for berserkers, and these are the same for the archers. So if you've already seen it, it's pretty much the same thing. But we're talking about the Ender Dragon pet and the Golden Dragon pet. The Ender Dragon pet is incredibly expensive, costing you around, I think it was 400 million coins for a tier boosted Ender Dragon, a tier boosted one. Let me just go on epic for now. An epic Ender Dragon costs you 360 million coins. And non-tier boost, I'm actually curious, how much does a non-tier boosted Ender Dragon cost you? Let's find the first one is not tier boosted. And I think the first one is here. Yeah, this is the first one, costing you 690 million coins. So if you have like hundreds and hundreds of millions of coins to spare and really want to go all out, the Ender Dragon is good. It will give you less EHP, but it will greatly increase your damage and some other stats. so it is usually better than the baby Yeti for berserkers. Additionally, it's also not recommended, at least I don't recommend, using an ender dragon that is tier boosted if you are a berserker, because once again, the shelmet is so incredibly important, and a tier boosted ender dragon cannot have a shelmet applied to them, meaning that you will actually be losing a lot of like your, I don't know, knockback resistance pretty much. So you need to get a shelmeted pet, and without shelmet, it just makes it really annoying to be a berserker. Of course, and then the final pet is the golden dragon, costing somewhere in the neighborhood of like 1.2 to 1.5 billion coins. The golden dragon is just overall a very, very strong pet, but only for damage, pretty much only for damage, and that's why I don't recommend the golden dragon. Of course, I've never used one, but from of all the guides I've seen, all the things that talk about the golden dragon, it's really underwhelming for its price, and is only really used to gain maximum damage when necessary. So when you do really want this maximum damage, as Refraction did in a few of his videos, when he fights Necron in his final phase, and you don't care about anything else apart from your damage, then you could go and start using a, I don't have a golden dragon, but a golden dragon. And it will be your ultimate endgame pet. Well guys, that was pretty much everything I had to say for this Berserker progression guide. I'm kind of sorry I was just like rambling on a little bit for some of the parts. It was mainly because like the Archer progression guide was just so similar, and I didn't want to repeat myself too much. And so yeah, so I would recommend watching both of the videos. If you want to see more, I do go I think in a little bit more detail in the Archer guide for this. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed or learned anything new from the video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and also once again join my Discord server. I'm doing a lot of giveaways there, and you can come chat with me if you want, and it's just a pretty good time. So join my Discord server, like and subscribe, and of course I hope you guys all have a wonderful day.